disasters we have been discussing so far, we are dealing with man-made disasters, cyber disasters, just like terrorism. And there we have to deal with very sophisticated threat actors, the nation states and cyber criminals of the underworld. So we are dealing with adversaries. So I called it adversarial decision making under deep uncertainty in cyber disaster. So we'll discuss cyber disaster preparedness, a proactive approach to cyber disasters. So this is based mostly on my research on cyber disaster and cyber disaster preparedness, and my dissertation is titled Sensing and Sense Making of the Early Warning Signs of Cyber Disasters in the Information Technology Sector. Dr. Patricia D. Urso was my dissertation committee chair, and Dr. John Puthenveetil, he's an investment expert, and he did this research on the financial crisis of 2007, the global financial crisis of 2007-2008. This presentation is not a presentation of my research findings, but more on an interpretation of my research findings. So, cyber disasters. We have seen a number of cyber disasters, particularly the Colonial Pipeline attacks and the SolarWinds hack. And these cyber disasters were caused by nation states. So, according to Eric Cole, who worked with National Security Agency, the world is already in World War III, and it is a cyber war, which is going on stealthily, silently, and it is between the developed cyber superpowers, USA, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and their allies all are in the fray. And cyber crisis is something that we have to take into account when we deal with the major problems that face the world. Brad Smith, who was the president of Microsoft, he told us about the emerging technologies and the wonders of the new technologies like artificial intelligence, 3D robotics, 3D printing, and so on, blockchain technology. But at the same time, he has warned us that these tools can be used as weapons, cyber weapons, to actually and the threat is that the world can be annihilated. The human race itself can be brought to a standstill. Sandworm is the book by Andy Greenberg, and he has described how in 2017, a small ransomware attack that happened in Ukraine that spread to the rest of the world, the various European countries, UK and USA, and affected major corporations around the world, and the loss was estimated to be $50 billion. So these cyber disasters are unanticipated, and they have devastating impact. Ultimately, when we analyze these cyber disasters, just like any other disaster, there are two major factors that come to the forefront: decision failures and systemic failures. So what is required is to prepare for these cyber disasters. Currently, what is done is a reactive approach. After the incident, post-incident, we react. And by that time, the damage has already happened. That has been the case with the COVID pandemic attack. So even after the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011, they came up with the Sendai framework, which advocates disaster preparedness, cyber disaster preparedness, to decrease the impact, the loss of human lives and the destruction of property, at the same time to increase the capabilities of nations and organizations to prepare for these disasters, cyber disasters. And they have advocated early warning systems. So nobody has thought about a cyber early warning system, and that is something which we are going to talk about. So in disasters, when there are decision failures and system failures, what is required is to sense the warning signs of these disasters and for decision makers to make sense of the warning signs. So sensing and sense making are two important aspects of cyber disaster preparedness. And there we find that there is a knowledge gap. Either there is no knowledge, no information, or there is very little information. So we have to design strategies which are knowledge-based. And that is something that we are going to discuss. So we have to have knowledge-based sensing systems and knowledge-based sense-making systems. And we have to deal with the information gap and mostly the ignorance of what is happening. So we are dealing with the unknown unknowns, the black swans. And that is where decision-making becomes more challenging. And that is decision-making under deep uncertainty. And since we are dealing with adversaries, it is adversarial decision making. So in decision making, what is found, particularly in concerning disasters, is that there are managerial blind sides. Managerial blind sides and the decision making biases and the noise, not only the decision making noise, the system noise, that has been pointed out by Kahneman and Tversky in the Kahneman got the Nobel Prize in Economics for this prospect theory dealing with this. So that is something which decision makers or decision making efforts behind disasters, particularly cyber disasters, that has been ignored. The decision making biases that lead to managerial failures. And there again, managers have to deal with systemic failures. The challenges are posed by the complexity of systems. So we are not dealing with linear systems. Complex systems are non-linear and they are unpredictable. So there we have to deal with organizational risk and more importantly, organizational fragility. So current systems, they are mostly, the risk management systems are probability based. So probability based systems fail in the face of disasters because we don't have past data. And probability requires a priority. Bayesian probability reasoning requires a priority data, a priority past data. And when we have no past data, then all these probability-based systems predictions fail. So when we are dealing with complex systems, we are dealing with the unknown unknowns, not the simple and complicated, the knowns and knowable systems, but the unknown unknown systems, the unforeseen and unforeseeable systems, the unimaginable threats and disasters. So there, we have to think of early warning systems, cyber early warning systems, which are based on sensing the threats and the vulnerabilities of these systems, and mostly these unknown threats. So organizational threat modeling becomes important, and there are certain frameworks now coming up, PASTA framework and so on, and also the MITRE attack framework, which deals with the threat factors and threat practices. So they are trying to deal with the unknown unknowns, but the problems are posed by the current intrusion detection systems or SIM or security incident event management systems, because they are based on what is known. So understanding the unknown threats, the possible threats, the probable threats, that requires behavioral analysis and so on. And the current risk assessment systems, they have to be improved, they have to be extended to fragility systems to understand the tipping points of system breakdown. And resiliency is also important because what has happened is in most of the ransomware attacks, many of these organizations did not have backup systems. They were not able to fall back upon data which was already encrypted or in the hands of the ransomware attackers. So having business continuity and disaster recovery systems and resilient systems, that is equally important, along with building up risk assessment and fragility systems and threat modeling systems. So these are some of, 1 minute, okay. So what is required is to have a systemic thinking in a non-linear world, and that requires understanding the complexity and the adaptability of the systems and the warning signs. Coming to the sense-making and decision-making challenges, again, we are dealing with adversaries, and the Kuhneman sense-making framework is deals with decision making under complexity and chaos, and sense making enablers or decision making enablers that requires managers to adopt a different type of thinking, what is called abductive thinking, as against deductive or inductive thinking, exploratory thinking, starting from first principles, just like scientists do, the scientific method. And for knowledge gaps and lack of knowledge, data analytics is now very powerful with deep learning and machine learning. So that can help in helping to bridge the knowledge gaps. And robust decision-making approaches certainly can help to manage ignorance and non-knowledge. So scenario planning in Monte Carlo simulations and so on. Abductive thinking requires exploratory thinking, thinking of possibilities beyond probabilities, and that requires creative imagination, design thinking, and exploration of the plausibilities and possible scenarios, and thinking like a rocket scientist. So here is a model of application of prescriptive analytics-based robust RDM model for cyber disaster risk reduction. So the inputs can be for possible scenarios. The inputs can be from a predictive or prescriptive analytics-based platform that can deal with the possible attacks and the risk impacts. And then after the robust decision-making treatment, you can deal with the risk treatment approaches. So that can lead to a proactive cyber defense model built on a cyber defense strategy, early warning systems, and knowledge-based sense-making systems. So this is in summary, cyber disaster preparedness involves adversary decision-making under deep uncertainty. I have described the challenges and enablers, and that can lead to knowledge-based strategies and building a cyber defense model. Thank you.